Jeff Sharples. My name is Ian Bagg. You just got off the ice teaching the kids of Las Vegas how to play hockey. How are you?
Good this morning, Lord Begg. How are you? I see it's a beautiful sunset behind you.
Oh, well, we talked about last week. Send us your photos of your town. And somebody sent me from the streets of San Francisco a sunset with a little bit of a mountain and a beautiful bridge. By the way, last night I took the bridge across the 47 down San Pedro to Long Beach. And that new bridge is spectacular. I hate to tell it. We are as a species, we're pretty amazing at times. And building that bridge was crazy. Nobody knows because it was done during COVID, but it's amazing.
I'm looking forward to being on that bridge. I'll be down there with you a few times in November, probably. So,
Yeah.
And hey, I got to correct myself. That's a sunrise in the background, not a sunset.
Oh,
sunrise. Yeah.
That's what you want your pilot,
So
not knowing which way is east.
Yeah. And west. Yeah. It's not good for my job, but I figured it out. We turned around. We're going the other direction now.
For you. You know which way to go.
Yeah. I do.
Let's talk about some hockey. First of all,
okay.
I'm in second place right now on our pool. I have no idea how that happened. I've got Demko as one of my goalies, and I'm still in second place. It's crazy.
That's really good. I think, you know what, I got to look back at some of the guys I picked, like Hurdle, he's hurt me. And then I made a couple others because it's like, well, why would I take McDavid when everyone else would? But you know what, I'm middle of the pack, I think. But I got to make some changes coming up, and but that's impressive. You're in second.
Mm-hmm.
What's Brian think of that?
He think he's in first. That's the crazy part.
He doesn't think anything of it.
No.
Well, he's a good thing he's a Canadiens fan, because the Leafs were in Vegas last night, and we'll talk to our guest.
Did you go to that game?
No, I didn't go, but I watched it, and just about as good. This is the third time on the Leafs this year, and I think they played 7 games, that I've heard the word either unacceptable or sleepy or lazy describing the team after a game. And I'm like, I can only imagine the amount of pressure on that team, because it's game 7. I mean, if you want to panic, and Vancouver is a place you could look at and say, okay,
right,
things are not going well there. But Toronto,
Toronto is just starting out. It's funny, they didn't have that much pressure on them in game 7 of the second series. You know what I mean? Like nobody was, or the first series, nobody was like freaking out that bad. And right now things are unacceptable. Son of a bitch. Oh, Harold Ballard is turning in his grave.
Yeah. It's kind of funny though, when you read like some of the press, like, last night I read this morning some of the articles, and one of the guys says, and just not playing well against non-playoff teams. Like Vegas skated them out of the rink last night, but Vegas had a hiccup last year. But Vegas perennially, since they've been in the league, has been a good team. And so I kind of laughed. They're like, just another non-playoff team that they didn't show up against. And I'm like, Vegas has been to the conference finals, and 3 times in the cup, 1 time or something like that. So it's not like
Vegas. I would have said Vegas. I would have said in the summer was not a playoff team, but since they've started, I would say they're definitely a playoff team right now. If everything keeps going on all cylinders, they are playing very well, and they're getting great goaltending. Yeah,
their goaltending's has been really good. There's some really nice stories in the league. Ottawa is a really nice story. I wanted to talk about them last week, but really nice story because they got off to a bumpy start, but they're putting people in the building. They're very exciting. People are fired up in Ottawa, which is great. Detroit and Buffalo are 2 other really good stories, which, we don't talk a lot about the East on this podcast. We try to spread it around, but those are great stories. And those are teams that are going to, cause some upheaval in the Eastern Conference this year if they keep going like that. Out west, it's a little bit disappointing when you look at how San Jose, Anaheim, and Vancouver have started in the Pacific, and then Chicago has been it's not been great there either. But and Minnie's got off to a slow start in Central. But if you're looking
Question
at
for you about
positive
Buffalo,
things,
though.
yeah,
About Buffalo. Don't they always start off strong?
they always seem to put together some kind of win streak near the
Right?
start of the season. But then, like after U.S. Thanksgiving, they seem to nosedive. But
You think it's different
looking,
this time?
well, I think there's a few things. I think they've kind of like was it the Pointer Sisters that had a new attitude? I think they have a new attitude uh, in Buffalo. I think, you know what? I think they've made some really good deals. Eichel
The
didn't want to
Pointer
be there.
Sisters.
They didn't want him. He's in Vegas, but they got
Right.
Tuck and Krebs,
Tuck's
and they
loving it
got
out there.
Tuck's like scoring a goal a game, and then they got a really high draft pick. They got some other high drafts. They signed Comrie as a free agent. He's come in and played really well in goal for them. So there's some really
So's
good
Anderson.
things.
Anderson's played pretty well
Yeah,
for
and Anderson's played well. He got the win in Vancouver the other night. But more than anything, I still think you got to put them. They're right there as the nicest jerseys in the league,
Ah,
nicest uniforms. They're right there.
the
Don't you think?
colors, the design, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be good to see them come back and get back into the chase.
The only thing that I would change, I would change it to the Buffalo Saber and just have one sword instead of saber. Just two sabers.
Okay.
There's not many teams that don't have an S on the end of their name. Like
So the Buffalo Saber.
the Buffalo Saber.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see it. You kind of called Ottawa. That's one of your teams. I watched them the other night play. It was Arizona, but I mean Arizona's going to struggle a little bit, but
They're fine.
they got a lot of people in that building again. It looks really good. You people are excited.
You're talking Ottawa, that building in Ottawa.
Ottawa, yeah. In Arizona, we're not sure, but they're going to play this week, right, at home. So we'll see what they do.
If that place is going to be packed like Hermosa Beach when Ian Bag plays there.
How did it go on Thursday? They're good.
Sold out. I hate to tell you, but I was sold out, jam packed to the rafters.
Did you tell Marco that you were too busy? You were too full. Hey, Marco, I thought
no,
get you
I
some
got it.
tickets,
I got Marco and 12 of his staff down, and yeah, they had a great time. We had a picture. Put it up right there. Right up that picture. That's there. I had a picture on stage after with them. They brought me some swag, and yeah, I got your hat, Jeff. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was just a fun time, and it was great to have them there at the old Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club. Hey, Jeff, tell us about our guest today.
Our guest today is the one of the best play-by-play callers in the NHL. I'll go out there. I love listening to him call a game. Dave Goucher from the Vegas Golden Knights is coming on. We're keeping our West Coast theme the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of West Coast coaches and people in organizations on. But no Dave, met Dave, and he's been here since the start of the Vegas experience. And he came from Boston. So I'm sure he doesn't want to hear about the New England Patriots last night and them getting drubbed by the Chicago Bears, but he was with the Bruins. He did radio and TV for them. Just a really good guy, has a great call, does a great job with Shane Knighty, who's the color commentator on it. And just a really distinct voice and a great call. So
gonna be here.
Yeah.
He's gonna be here, and that's gonna be a lot of fun. You imagine going from Boston to Las Vegas. Boston just seems like it would be a fun town to do sports in. Have I ever told you about the time I went to the game there and it was an afternoon game and I'd never seen so many drunk parents in my life? They were just hammered.
Yeah, they don't mind having a good time out in Boston. It's a great city.
I'd never seen anybody throw kids to get free t-shirts before until I went to that game. You know, when they shoot the t-shirts into the stands.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
just tossing their kids to catch the t-shirt. We need that. We need to save $12.50. Get that t-shirt.
The TD Garden right downtown. Really, really cool city. And
you didn't play in that building, right? You played in the
no, yeah, I played in the Garden. The Boston.
What was that like? What's that
Crazy.
feeling going in there as the competition? That is scary?
Well, we had some pretty rough customers. So, but back then the game was, it was pretty rough. But I will say this: there's two buildings. One was in our division, which was Chicago. Are three that I remember distinctly. One was in our division with Chicago. The other one was Boston. The other one was Buffalo. These buildings were 17, 18,000 people on top of you, but they were smaller than regulation size ice. So there was very little neutral zone in these buildings. And so if I remember correctly, which hopefully Dave doesn't correct me, but yeah, they were right on top of you. And I do remember a story, and I don't know if we remember to ask Dave, but they are really passionate about their players. And one night, one guy was catcalling Wayne Cashman, who was their captain. This was back 70s. And they said, "Hey, you can't say that here." And basically, the guy kept going. And next thing you know, he was down about 10 rows of stairs, trying to pick himself back up. Like he basically, if he'd have been in the upper deck, he probably would have been thrown off the upper deck. That's kind of how rabid they are, but loyal they are to the players in Boston. And I'm sure it goes for their other sports teams as well.
You see video of fights in stands nowadays, and everybody go, "Oh, the fans are crazy," but it's always been happening. The only difference was nobody videotaped it before. Every so often there would be a photo, you'd see one of those but now you get to see the whole video as it starts, and you're like, "Oh, people are out of control." I like when they fight at baseball. I don't know how you get passionate at baseball. Like, I really have no idea.
Maybe it's because there's usually lots of seats during the season, unless maybe you go to like a Dodgers game, and then all of a sudden everybody's crammed in there in the playoffs. Because normally you go to a ball game, you can find an area, in most stadiums where you can kind of just have a little bit of room to yourself, unless you want to sit, behind, from third base around to first base in that area. Once you start getting spread out a little bit in the outfield, there's usually some room. So maybe people are they're having a hard time with some personal space.
Maybe it's very interesting. I love when they get fired up at baseball, and it's like, well, you got another 8 innings to keep yourself calm there, Jenny. I don't know. Do you like going to baseball? Do you like going to baseball?
I haven't been to a baseball game in a long time. I went as a kid, and then I went as an adult to Dodger Stadium. Kind of a historic place.
Dodger Stadium is fun to go to.
Yeah, and you know what though? I've been to a couple others, but baseball, one of the things I noticed about baseball, last time I went to a Dodgers game, they were playing the Colorado Rockies, and there's this murmur throughout the crowd because the game doesn't move that fast. So everyone's just sitting there visiting. So you hear this do, and then you hear crack, and then people will be, "Oh, something happened," right? As the guy hits the ball. But that's something that caught my attention was, there wasn't, like at a hockey game or even at a football game. Been to the Raiders here recently. There's a lot of noise and a lot of energy directed towards the game and what's happening on the field. I know it's a lot more physical and quicker game, but baseball, I noticed a lot of talking in the stands. So I guess that's my takeaway.
I find football moves very slowly live. The game is it's a lot of dead time there. So I'm not a big fan of watching the football. I'm not live, and I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of going to baseball and just hanging out and having some drinks and having some peanuts. Hey, before we bring our guest in, let's talk about Super Deker. Super Deker is a hockey training system that lets you train at home. No need for ice. All you do is you get this puck that's got a magnet in it, and it connects to all these little dots on a piece of plexiglass. There's a system underneath. Next thing you know, you're in the NHL, passing it over to Draisaitl and having a good time with all the players because you learned how to stick handle on Super Deker. So go to superdeker.com and use slices as a code, get some sort of discount. And next thing you know, you're thanking old Jeff and Ian for getting you to the NHL. I was listening to this podcast the other day. I was like, we might have to get get Brian to get rid of some of the silences that we have. That
Well, I
you just look at
commented
me like
last
I'm
week.
dumb.
I commented last week on the way you did the super deker and that you even remembered, which was huge. And then you kind of just rolled it off. And then all of a sudden I could just envision while you were talking about super deker this week, everyone thinking, I got to go play in Edmonton, but I get to play with McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, if you get a super deker, you get to play with those two, boy.
Yeah, you get to go to Edmonton. That's where
Yeah,
you're
if you
going.
don't use a super deker, welcome to Vancouver. All right, let's go. Let's go to our special guest right now. Enjoy. How exciting. We got Dave Goucher from his home, voice of the Las Vegas Knights. He is here. It's a big season right this year, Dave, and nobody was expecting it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, they've got, you know what, Ian, they've got a little bounce back to do. Missed the playoffs last year. The bar is set real high out here in Vegas, obviously. I mean, Sharps, you know that, and having lived here you've been here, what, 40, 50, 60 years? And, you know,
you're supposed to take Ian down, not me.
Yeah. They expect a lot. You know, Bill Foley's pretty, you know, he has high expectations, and I think that's a good thing. But yeah, coming off last year where they had just an obscene amount of injuries, hopefully be able to get back to the playoffs this year.
It's very exciting. So where did you grow up? How does hockey start in your life?
Grew up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. You ever heard of that?
Oh, I love Rhode Island.
No. Tiny little, smallest state in the country. Like you could drive through Rhode Island. This is a true story. Connecticut border. So it's just between Connecticut and Massachusetts. You could hit the southern border of Rhode Island and go into Massachusetts in an hour. That's how small it is.
That is a perfect size of a state. This whole California has got to be cut up into three things. I don't care what anybody says. I love a little Rhode Island. Get in, get out.
Yeah, so it's Pawtucket, Rhode Island is about 10 minutes north of Providence. So I grew up there. So we didn't have any major league teams in Rhode Island. We eventually had the Providence Bruins, who I worked for, and the Pawtucket Red Sox, which were team with the Boston Red Sox. So you adopted the Boston teams, right? Bruins. So I grew up in Pawtucket, rooting for all those teams. But yeah, little city about 10 miles north of Providence.
And do you play hockey as a kid or just hockey?
Played hockey, athlete, obviously, athlete.
Right. Yep,
as you can tell. And
nothing but shoulders.
Yeah, big shoulders, big broad shoulders. And you know, I played hockey from the time I was 5, and loved it. You know, it turned out to be my favorite sport. Played hockey through high school, and then I went to prep school for a year. Did a post-grad year. It's like a 13th grade. They call it. They call it now a gap year. I took a year off because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. Now they have a fancy phrase for it.
So important.
Back in the late 80s, they were like, you figure out your life here. So I did a post-grad year at a prep school in Wilbraham, Massachusetts, where Billy Guerin was a senior in high school, who went on to have some decent success for himself.
Never heard of him. Tell us more.
And, and then I ended up, I wanted to try and play hockey in college, and I went to Boston University, which they didn't need an undersized, not overly fast guy to play center for them. So that was the end of that. But I also went to BU because they have a great communications program. So my junior and senior year of college, I broadcasted the games, the hockey games, hockey, baseball, football on student radio. Nobody listened. Nobody gave a crap less, which was good because they weren't missing much because it was not much to listen to. But anyways, that's how it got started. Played hockey my whole life. And then, you know, remember the line from, you guys saw Moneyball, the whole Billy Bean thing? It's a line in that movie. They said, hey, Billy, eventually somebody tells you can't play anymore. Sometimes you hear it when you're 20, sometimes you hear it when you're 42. But sometimes somebody eventually tells you that. So I heard that when I was 20, I guess, and said, well, what the hell do I do? But I always had loved the game and wanted to try to figure a way to stay involved. So I thought broadcasting might be a pretty good gig.
I think that's awesome that, you know, you were able to continue on your love of the game from the game. You know what I mean? That's fantastic. But do you have that? Like your voice is very deep. Are you always that kid that has a deep voice, or do you have to work at this?
Once I got through puberty, it was okay. Oh. You know, I used to talk like this. And then,
here comes Billy Guerin down the left side.
That's right. Carlson, Marshall, score. I was, no, I was the kid though. So I'm an only child, and or as my friends and my wife call it, OCS, I have the only child syndrome.
Right.
And but my cousins and my buddies, all for whatever reason, my house was kind of where we all hung out as a kid. So wiffle ball, street hockey, basketball, whatever it was. But I was a kid as a 7, 8-year-old that would be announcing the game as we were playing the game.
No way. That's great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was one of those guys, one of those losers, right? My cousins who I grew up with would say, you should tell people you've been doing this since you were like 7 years old. I'm like, yeah, but not kind of, you know what I mean? So anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I've been doing this crap since I was 7.
But this crap is awesome. We always have one kid that does that, and it just makes when you don't have that on a bench, it sucks. I love whenever I play open hockey, I always make the announcement how many people are in the stands. I always in the middle of the game, I'll just tonight's attendance 10.
I'd like to personally welcome Joe, Bill, Bob, Sue, Jane. Thanks for coming.
Which one of your pansies brought your girlfriend?
Yeah. Which one? Who did you sucker to bringing somebody to watch this junk? Yeah.
I love it. That's great. So you end up at BU. That's huge.
Yeah.
Scholarship or just being an only child paid for?
No, yeah, I had the only child scholarship, and just took my dad and I took student loans out of our ears pretty much.
No doubt.
Back then, we're talking early 90s. Now they're all ridiculous, right? All the private colleges, I don't know, they're $70,000 a year, something like that.
Good luck.
Back then it was probably 20, which in 1990 was a crap load of money. So took student loans out all over the place. And and then I love my time there. I mean, I love the city of Boston. I was lucky I was able to work there for a long time doing the Bruins games, which is, fast forward in the story many years.
Right.
But loved my time at BU, and it was never, you were in a big city, right? But you also had your campus, and there weren't a lot of nights where you wondered, well, what am I going to do tonight? Like there was a lot you had access to be in a city like that. But more than anything, I think, guys, it gave me the opportunity. I think so. My last 2 years of school, I probably called 45 hockey games on our radio station. And you guys are certainly you old enough to remember cassette tapes. I recorded every game on cassette tape, and I still have somewhere here in my garage to this day. Now it's just 30 years ago, and I still
heads up on that though. Goucher, it's Vegas, right? And that stuff in the garage, it might melt on you in the summer around here.
Well, then I let it cool down in the winter.
It deepens his voice.
Hey,
right.
So
when the tape stretches a little bit.
Yeah,
I have a question for you. So you call baseball hockey. Obviously, you grew up playing hockey, and then football is big at BU as well. Did you and calling all three of those sports is much different? Did you just gravitate because you loved hockey so much, or just the action? Like what did you kind of get pushed in that direction because there were other guys that wanted to do the football or basketball or the other games at the university?
I gravitated to it. You're right, because it was my favorite sport. I just, for whatever reason, you get that, I was 5 years old when I first started playing, and I've always loved it the most. And I think I did the other sports, and I've done some baseball occasionally since then. Really, I haven't done too much football since then. But I wanted to do the other sports to get the experience of it, especially when you're a young person trying to figure out how the hell to get into this business. You don't know. I mean, I think I was hoping I would eventually end up doing hockey games. There's no guarantee of that. I mean, I could have ended up doing baseball in theory, or, it's funny, after I started my first 2 years in professionally doing this, where somebody actually paid me real money, not a lot of money, but the checks cleared every couple of weeks. I was in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is a little, great little place about an hour southwest of Pittsburgh. But after my second year there, I had somebody offer me a job to do baseball, like I want to say it was AA baseball in Roanoke, Virginia. And I just didn't, I like baseball well enough. I don't like it well enough to go do in the minor leagues, 144 games a year. Plus I love the summers, and I thought, I don't want to be, God forbid I have a job where I have to work in the summertime. I've been trying to avoid that for 30 years, for God's sake. So, but yeah, I wanted to get the experience of doing other sports. I marvel at guys that that do multiple sports at a real high level. I've done predominantly hockey in my career, but the guys that can do, there's guys a hell of a lot better than me that can do everything. But I do love what I do in my sport quite a bit.
Hey, what like when you were coming up, just walk us through, Dave. Like you've got your cassette tapes. Where do you send those? What how does that, like, you've got to get the word out. Who and who kind of gave you your first kind of break, or how did that all come together?
So I had my cassette tapes going for me. At least I had that going, and I didn't have much else. And I went we had a studio at BU, and I went in and made a resume tape. You guys remember the old reel-to-reel machines? Remember seeing those? Where you had to dump your stuff onto the reel-to-reel machine because you'd have to edit it. You kind of wanted to edit a snappy sounded cassette. So you had like the razor that would cut the tape, the splicing tape. It was a royal pain in the ass because if you screwed it up, you had to start over again. But anyway, I labored through making a cassette tape. And then I have a real good friend of mine named Bernie Corbett, who's like an institution at BU. And he did the games in college. Bernie's probably 10 years older than me. And he did the games at BU on a station you could actually hear, like a regular station, not the student radio station. So we got to be quite close, and we're still good friends to this day. But we met and had a beer, like, I don't know, right after I graduated. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. I'd like to continue broadcasting. And he said, well, here's what I knew. I knew the NHL and Hockey East. That's it. I didn't know about the East Coast Hockey League, the old IHL back then. The AHL meant nothing to me. So he said, well, it's a team in Wheeling, West Virginia that is looking for an announcer. There was a defenseman that had played for the team that had played at BU, and Bernie was talking to this guy, Tom Dion, who's a defenseman, the day before. I said to Bernie, where the hell is Wheeling, West Virginia? What are you talking about? And he said, because, if you put a gun to me and said, find Wheeling, West Virginia on a map, you'd probably have to pull the trigger. Like, I had no idea where it was.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to interrupt you. That is the most New England thing ever. There's someplace else outside of here. What?
Outside of this 6-state region, the world exists? You've got to be kidding.
What?
What do you mean?
I know comedians that have never left that area that are so amazing and make like hundreds of thousands of dollars and don't leave that area. It's crazy.
Well, and I'll tell you this, in Rhode Island, there are people think that the world ends at like the northern border, like Kentucky, and it ends like in Newport. That's it. That's the world. And if you veer out of that, like Lord knows, you might just blow up in flames. But no, so I said to him, where the hell's Wheeling, West Virginia? And he said, I don't know, but they've got a job evidently if you want to send your stuff. So it's kind of a funny story. So I called the team and found out who to send the general manager of the team was. And then, I don't know, a couple days later, well, it had to be a week later, I guess, back in those days, I was living in this apartment. I had graduated college. I was living in an apartment with my 2 roommates. And the GM of the team called me, and my buddy answered the phone. He didn't have any of these. No friggin' cell phones back then.
That's the size of a cassette tape.
That's the size of a cassette tape, exactly. 8-track. Should have got an 8-track player. And my buddy answered the phone and said, Dave, it's Larry Kish from the Wheeling Thunderbirds on the phone. And I thought he was like, there's no way they're calling me. He goes, oh, it's really on the phone. So I talked to him, and he's one of the few people in my life, my Little League baseball coach, Eddie Olczyk, and Larry Kish, that called me Davey. Davey, we got your tape yesterday. And I'm thinking, oh, no. And he says, if you can make your way down here did not sound like they were flying me to Wheeling, West Virginia. There's no airport in Wheeling. There's a tiny airport, like a charter airport. You can fly into Pittsburgh.
Right.
So, and I didn't have any money. Couldn't afford to fly. So I called AAA. And remember the triptychs? You guys ever see the triptychs from AAA back those days? They would map out the route for you.
Really?
Almost looked like a reporter's notebook. Like they would highlight it in yellow. Okay, you leave Boston, you head 95 south, blah, blah, blah. And then you get on the turnpike, and then you get to Penn. So they mapped it out for you. So I remember saying to the woman at AAA, I said, hey, I've got to go from Boston to Wheeling, West Virginia next on Friday. And she said, well, it usually takes about a week to get that done, sir. I said, well, I need it in 2 days. And she said, where are you going again? I said, Wheeling, West Virginia. And she goes, okay, I'll see if I can find that on the map. And anyway, I don't know, for whatever reason, they gave me a shot. I drove down. So here, I drove down 12 hours, 12-hour drive, met with the GM of the team, had dinner at the only sports bar in Wheeling at the time, stayed over at the Hampton Inn. Good spot.
Yeah.
Nice.
Actually, not too
Hopefully
bad.
right beside the freeway. Was
Yeah,
right beside
yeah.
the freeway or the mill. Would be good.
Yeah. And met with the rest of the staff the next day.
Mhm.
And which I remember it was in July. It was hot as hell. I didn't own a suit. You know, you got a sports coat and khaki pants. And I think I had 2 ties. And I changed in the parking lot of the rink. It was like 98 degrees, 90% humidity. Changed in the shorts and a t-shirt to drive 12 hours back. So I was in Wheeling 32 hours, maybe 34 hours. And, you know, the whole ride was 24 hours back and forth. But for
What was
whatever
the interview?
reason-
Was the interview? Did you call anything or what?
No,
Just
all
met
they
them?
had him was my tape, right? They had my cassette tape. You know, and at that level, I would say, and it was the same thing when I got to the age. You do a lot of different things. You know, broadcasting the game is one of them. You write all the press releases, do all the player appearances.
Oh, I see.
Sell advertising in the off season. You know, when I get to the American League, book all the road trips, gave the guys all their per diem, book all the team meals. So it was
Really?
yeah, and all in Wheeling for a whopping $20,000. So a lot of money,
That's a lot.
huge dough. I remember
Yeah.
they called and offered me the job, and I was thinking to myself, but I didn't do the math. I remember, Davey, we had a good meeting with the owners last night. We're prepared to make you an offer, $20,000 for the season, and this is what. And I'm like, really, what I was thinking was, holy crap, someone's going to actually pay me money
Right.
to do this. I didn't divide it, 20,000 divided by 52 weeks, minus taxes, minus social security. Like none of that crap really computed in my mind. I just knew someone was going to pay
Who
me.
cares? Who
to
cares
call
at that point?
Yeah,
Right?
I would have. Yeah. So I picked up everything I had, which wasn't much, and off to Wheeling, West Virginia.
That's awesome. That's the thing that anybody, if you want to do something, you're not going to start with the Boston Bruins. You're going to start at the
No.
bottom. And if you have that attitude, you're not going to get to the Boston Bruins. And I love that you drove down. That just
Oh, yes.
makes me happy. Just like, oh, I'm going to
I
get
got
there.
The
I'm gonna
friggin'
blow
trip
these-
tick. Like it wasn't, you put it, there was no Google Maps. And I'm like,
Wow.
where am I going? You
Oh,
know, but I will say, like, I think that, you know, having been in this business a long time, I think that's just what you do. You know, I
Right.
mean, you got to start somewhere. And if nothing else, it gave me the opportunity in East Coast League then. I don't know what it is now. They played 68 games a year, but the team was popular as hell. They'd been there a year.
mhm.
They had gone to the finals the year before. There was kind of like big fish, small pond. Like in Wheeling, West Virginia, it's kind of, you're right on the Ohio border. So high school football is the big thing. Friday nights, they do hour-long shows on high school football, which was totally foreign to me, you know, from where I was from. But it gave me an opportunity to do hockey games.
Would
And
they-
because I had no other plan. I had no plan B.
Would the team try to stay away from playing Friday nights? Would they?
A little bit, but it's, you know, that at that level, yeah, they did a little bit, but as best you could, because it largely was a weekend league. You know,
Right.
it's Friday, Saturdays, like America, Friday, Saturday.
Interesting.
So would you guys play on the road? Well, I guess it depends on who you're playing, but maybe because you're right. A lot of times you play 3 and 3, right? Well, you
Yeah.
might play a Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, but you were playing all your games. So I know I've heard like with the Stars with Dallas, they won't play a Friday night game this time of year because the high school football there's just no crowd. No one shows up. It's
Yeah.
such a big deal. So obviously it's a pretty big deal around Wheeling, West Virginia as well. So after that, Dave, where did you?
Before I get there,
yeah.
Jeff, I have a question. While you were there,
Yeah.
who's the player that stood out the most that we've never heard of?
Guys, remember a guy named Darren Schwartz, played in the Western Hockey League, farm boy from, I could be messing this up. I want to say from Medicine Hat, but I could be wrong. He could have been from Saskatchewan. Darren Schwartz was one of those guys at that level that could score 50 goals and beat the crap out of you. You know, he was one of those guys. And we had another guy who was a little winger, Vadim Slivchenko, little Russian guy, that he ended up going to play in the eye. But there was a lot of guys that, you know, spent time in the East Coast League. Like I remember Byron Defoe, goaltender Byron Defoe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oli Kolzig spent some time in the East Coast League. There was, but on our team, and I will say I was lucky that the team was good. Like we had my first year, the team lost in the semifinals. The second year, they had the best record in the league, and then they got upset in the first round of the playoffs. But you know, they had good teams there, which made it, always makes it a lot, because you guys, Sharps, I mean, you're on a bus for, God, you're on buses for forever. Our closest road trip was 2 hours to Columbus, Ohio. It was 2 hours due west on I-70. Here was our division: Toledo, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Huntington, West Virginia. What else is in there? That might have, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, Slapshot, that building.
Yeah.
And Erie, Pennsylvania. That was our division. So you talk about, we used to look forward to going south, would go to like Charlotte, Charleston, South Carolina, Hampton Roads, to get some decent weather and get out of the freezing cold in the wintertime.
I hate to tell you, last May I was in that league because I played all those towns.
Yeah. It was the East Coast League of like what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Putting in my time. Just
That's right.
I was scoring 50 and beating people up. That was
yeah. But Sharps, you asked me from there, right? So from there I went to Providence in the American Hockey League.
Okay.
I was, and again,
how does that happen?
So how it happened was, it's kind of interesting. I was coming home, so the Wheeling season had ended, and I was coming home. My dad was still with us at the time, and I was coming home to visit him just for a week, And I had called a friend of mine to let her know that I was coming home. We had dated a little bit in college, but it was more just we hadn't seen each other in a couple of years. And we were talking, and she said, by the way, I think the Providence Bruins, Boston's farm team, are looking for an announcer. And I'm like, we had been talking for 10 minutes. I'm like, talk about burying the lead. Like, do you think I'd be interested in this crap? So
that's great that you got a kitten.
Yeah. Exactly. So I called the team the next day, and the fellow by the name of Randy Scott, who to this day is now a good friend of mine, really good friend of mine. But he didn't know me from Adam back in 1995. And I said, I'm from Pawtucket, and whoopee, I'm from Pawtucket. But the Providence Bruins were kind of my hometown team now. I mean, they're 10 minutes away. Plus, it was a chance to step up a rung on the ladder. I said, no, I'm going to be home next week visiting my dad. You wouldn't even have to pay to fly me up there. Not that they would have paid to fly me up there. And he says, well, yeah, call us when you get into town and we'll see. But send your stuff in the meantime. So I was like, okay. Well, at least they wanted to hear whatever I had done in the East Coast League. So I called when I get in, and I could hear them like flipping through the appointment book. Friday at 2:00. Like, it wasn't very that, but interested enough that he was going to let me come in and at least make my pitch. Went in, and I guess went well enough, because 2 weeks later they offered me the job. So here we now we're doing the ride in reverse. Drive everything back in a U-Haul truck from Wheeling to Rhode Island, and was lucky enough. I'd be lying, guys, if I think any of us that advance in the business might not be just unique to my business, but there's got to be some level of good fortune there. Like I had one of my good friends at BU that told me about the job in Wheeling. I call a friend of mine in Rhode Island. I'm coming home on vacation. She knows that Providence has an opening. So
right place at the right time.
Yeah, if I don't hear about that, I don't know what I'd be doing. But it was to be able to come back home, and B, to be able to take another step up was was pretty cool. And at that point, I was still fairly young. I think I was 26 or something like that. So that was great. How
does the call go to Wheeling? Davey, you're leaving me in a lurch here. I don't know.
Tell you what.
How about 21.5?
Yeah. 22.5 is what I was making that year, Well, I'll tell you what, it was It went okay. The GM of the team was a little annoyed, if that's the word.
How dare you do well?
Which made me annoyed. Look, the whole, in my mind anyways, the whole purpose of East Coast League, AHL, IHL, by and large, now you get some guys, Sharps, like you've done your thing in the NHL and, especially in the old IHL, now you're kind of on the way back down the ladder.
Mhm.
But you want to play a few more years. But if you're young, you're trying to advance.
Right.
Broadcasters, trainers, equipment guys, coaches, players. That's the whole purpose of it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I think, he was mildly annoyed, which made me annoyed. But I think we all got over it. I just said, look, I don't know what to tell you here. Look, I've done pretty good work, and this is an opportunity. And I will tell you this. I had a good friend of mine that worked. I used to intern, a couple of summers in a row. I interned at a TV station in Providence. And two great guys were the anchors there, Ken Bell and Gene Levanchi. And Gene had gone on. He used to host Bruin games on television in Boston. He had gone on to work in TV in Boston. He was a terrific guy. So, and one of my mentors. So I called him because I was kind of in that, look, I like it well enough here, but I've got an opportunity. How do I handle this? And he said, let me tell you something. If that team in Providence makes you an offer, you're out of there. Because here's what could happen. In 5 years, so this is 1995, what happens in 5 years if the Boston Bruins are looking for a radio announcer and they look to the guy in Providence and it's not you because you decided for whatever insane reason to stay where you're at? And once I kind of heard that from him, the game, set, match. And son of a bitch, that's exactly what happened. 5 years later, the Boston Bruins were looking for a radio announcer. And for whatever reason, picked me. So
That's awesome.
I don't know if he had this clairvoyant view of the future, but that's exactly what ended up happening. So
I think it was a little bit of luck, but I also think that's, the way he obviously believed in you and he knew that's the way you were headed. And that's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
As you say, minor league to the major league. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. So it worked out.
How terrified are you the first day you're doing an NHL game?
Pretty scared. It's funny about, say again.
Pretty crackly in the voice. Well, here I am.
Yeah, here we are. Welcome to Buffalo.
Boy, it's exciting.
That's right. I'm so excited. I can't even speak. No. Well, we ended up doing. So I spent 5 years in Providence. So that was 7 years doing games between the East Coast and the American League. And then the Bruins. I managed to get the Bruins job in the summer of 2000. Which, if you had asked me back then, or even back to the 7-year-old me calling our street hockey games, for Christ's sakes, in the driveway, if you had said to me, "Hey, you're going to be the Bruins radio announcer someday," I'd say, "Okay, that's it. I'm not going to look. That's the end of the road. Like I'll do that for 40 years, and just put me out to pasture." But we did 4 exhibition games that year on radio. Actually, we usually ended up doing 3 or 4 every year, it seemed, but. For me, I was most nervous before the first exhibition game for a couple of reasons. One is in the preseason, you'd fly to the city. That game was in Buffalo. You just fly up day of. They weren't going to waste the money flying you the day before for an exhibition game, putting you up in the hotel. So we flew day of to Buffalo, and I'd never been in, like in any other. I don't think I'd been in any other NHL rink besides the Garden in Boston. Like I'd never. So I think I'd been to Montreal once. I think I'd been to the Forum once, the old Forum. Flew up day of the game, so I'm already nervous. And God rest him, Pat Burns was the coach of the Bruins. And Pat could be an intimidating guy, and here's me, like I'm the new guy, and I had to interview him because we would do a coaches show. And I just remember thinking, God, like, can I just get through the interview? We'd tape the interview. And actually, he was really good, and he probably sensed that I was, scared or intimidated or both. But then once the game couldn't start fast enough, But then once they dropped the puck, it was a hockey game, So it was just everything kind of leading up to it. So the first exhibition game was when I was most nervous. By the time, we got to the regular season game, I think I get a quick little side note for that. The Ottawa Senators was the first game that they, the regular season they started. And so once I got to that, I was kind of okay with everything. The side note is, I'm going to fast forward the story. I get out here to Vegas 17 years later, and I'm teamed up with some dude on television named Shane Knighty, right? So, who I don't like very much. And that's why we spend basically every day together. So the sheriff, we get out here and he puts the pieces together. He had spent a bunch of years in the AHL as well, and even a stint in the East Coast League, but and a little bit in the I too. So he had paid his, everyone pays their dues in different ways.
Right.
So we get out here to Vegas, and he put together that his first NHL game was with the Ottawa Senators in Boston, the same game I was.
No way.
My first game. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think Sammy Salo got hurt in the morning skate, defenseman for Ottawa. And Shane was the extra defenseman. And he get in the lineup that night. So we were probably both kind of nervous, but yeah, you just couldn't make that crap up that all these years later would end up working together.
You know how weird my brain is when you said Sammy Salo. I was like, why is Sammy Sosa there?
Two-sport star.
Yeah, like,
Two-sport star.
Yeah, he was just out there
using corked bats and corked hockey sticks.
Oh, the best, the corked hockey.
And I'm a little surprised at you too on that one, Lord Bag, because Sammy Solo played for the Canucks, and you know every guy that ever played for the Canucks.
Oh, I know them all.
Lord Bang, do you remember the 2011 Cup final or no?
Do I? Burnt that town down.
Did you block it out of your memory bank?
I remember. This is what I remember. I was watching CBC. Down here, and I'm in Long Beach, California, and they played Adele. We almost had it all, and also I thought to myself, the Canucks are done. That's what I remember. It was the first game. I'm like, they're done.
Oh, they played it before game one, not game
before
7.
game 1, and I was just like, we're not going to win this. And then at the end, I was just like, fucking Adele.
So it's Adele's fault.
Oh, absolutely. We should have burned her house down, not our mall.
Can I tell you a funny little story on my experience with that? Well, I'm in Vancouver, lucky enough to be able to call the Bruins winning the cup, right? But that game was a 5:00 game Pacific time, right? Local time.
Right.
So everything was done for me, like a couple of interviews the day before, because the Bruins weren't going to have a morning skate. So I remember getting out of the hotel in Vancouver the morning of the game, and I went down to where the Olympic Cauldron is in Vancouver.
Right.
The year before. There's like the Cactus Club, and there's some coffee shops, and I just wanted to get out of the hotel. I was just climbing the walls because you may never get this opportunity ever again in your life to maybe call your team winning the Stanley Cup. So anyway, I was able to get out of the hotel and then got to the Bruins win it. And after we didn't travel with the team in the playoffs because they had extra players and staff, and so we were flying. The broadcasters, win or lose, were staying in Vancouver and flying back next. Well, they win, and we're in the locker room, and it's chaos, right? It's what you'd expect: right. Beer, champagne, cigars, people. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So anyway, the team's going back though either way. The team is flying back to Boston, win or lose. They sure as hell weren't going to stay if they lost, and they wanted to get back to Boston with the cup if they won. They win. Shane Knighty left, by the way, played for the Bruins, retired after that. He's on that team. And he tells the story to this day, left with suit, no shirt of any kind. Just sports coat. I think he had pants on, but no shirt. I
don't believe it. I don't believe the pants, but
what a look. So anyway, it's me and the 3 other announcers, and we're in the changing room in Vancouver. There's the main room. We ended up in the changing room. Just you had to get somewhere to be able to sit down. So the team leaves, and we look up. You maybe think of it with now the whole city's on fire. Cars are being flipped over, and so we looked up, and there was a monitor up, and we're like, "What the hell? What the hell are we going? How are we getting back to the hotel? I'm not going. These people are crazy." So no sooner do we think that, and somebody wheels in this big bin of Molson Canadian beer that was supposed to be from the Vanc for the Canucks celebration.
Ah,
And we drank pretty much the bin dry. And we let the city calm down and
right.
then went back to the hotel, but we ended up drinking the beer from the Canucks locker.
I love that they just left you guys behind.
Yeah. Hey,
It's like the Edna Fitzgerald. And they come back. It's been, boys, it's been good to know you.
yeah, guys, love you, mean it, but you're on your own.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you get a ring? Did you get a
Yes.
ring out of that? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
The Bruins were great. I will tell you, they did like different tiers of rings. Like we got the second tier, I think. Blair's obviously the first one, but it's yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know, I have a little funny joke on that, a funny story on that too. I get the ring, and I go to the Erie Pub in Dorchester, Massachusetts, which is a legendary pub back in Boston. So I'm living at the time in Milton, Massachusetts, just on the edge of town, next door to one of my roommates from college. So he says to me, "Hey, come to the Erie." I had got the ring the day before. Bring the ring. People, and I'm like, He goes, no, people will love it. You know, they'll love to see it.
I love to own it.
Yeah, they'd love to steal it. So everyone does the same thing. They try, but it's a bar. Like you can't bring kids in, but husbands are calling their wives, bring the kids, come out front. Like there was a front, like the curb outside the bar. Everyone does the same thing. They put the ring on their finger and they do they put it next to their face, and take like a selfie. So this one woman, and I don't know why, because I don't have very big hands at all, but she couldn't get the ring over her knuckle. And as she's taking the picture, I can see the ring in slow motion falling off her finger.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my, and it was and it tumbles to the curb, hits the curb. Now I've had this thing friggin' 30 hours, hits the curb, flips, hits again. So I'm like, all right, that's it. Screw this. That's the end of it. And never again, ever in that scenario that I ever bring it. So it gets nicked up in places. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. What's going on here?
Right.
So when you get the ring, Jostens made them, I think, and you get all the paperwork that came with it. So you get this 800 number to call, and the woman says, I call this 800 number the next day. She goes, don't worry about anything. Send me that ring back. I'm going to send you an insured envelope today. Put the ring in the envelope and mail it back to me. And we'll look at it and see what we can do. A week later, got the ring back. They buffed everything out. Like now I wouldn't even know. I couldn't tell you really where the dings were in it. But my wife was like, did any diamonds? It's got like 158 diamonds. Did we lose any diamonds? I said, I don't think so. But that was it for going to the local dive bar with a Stanley Cup ring. Like what?
And this woman had massive hands, like she had Lucic fingers on her. And
I don't know what's going on. Like, how can you not, but it was just tumbled out. I'm like, oh my God, this is painful.
I think we've learned a lesson. Don't take your expensive stuff to a dive bar.
No.
We'll all learn that.
Yeah.
So you end up, you win this, you do the Stanley Cup playoffs, 2011. So what year did the Vegas Golden Knights come in?
17.
So what year are you even thinking about going to another team?
I'm thinking more about trying to do television. Like I had it wasn't even so much a specific team, but I had done a package of games, college hockey games for NBCSN. I want to say in 2013, 14, 15, I did a few games for them. And after the first game I did, it's funny. I was up. It was I think UMass played the University of Maine up in Orono, Maine. And after the first game I did for NBCSN, I thought to myself, I would really love to take a crack at TV someday if the opportunity presents itself. Now, what I had to weigh there was radio in Boston or TV in another city, right? Like talking an original six team, a sports crazy city. They had won the cup a couple of years earlier. They had real good teams. They had just lost in the final in 13 to Chicago. So I kind of wanted a unique opportunity. You know, I wasn't just going to pick up and go anywhere for the sake of it. But so that was like in 2013, 14, whatever it was. The issue was nobody else was thinking that. It wasn't like they were kicking the doors out saying, Dave, please, could you please come here and do the games on television? They could give a rat's ass. Nobody cared, you know? But when Vegas got a team, now you're talking the first ever major league team in Vegas, being part of the first ever TV team in Vegas, one of the most unique places on earth. That's a whole different ballgame. You weren't just picking up and moving.
It wasn't Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus, wherever, you know. You were talking now. Yeah.
One of the Western Conference's most strong teams.
So I wasn't, but that was my point. I wasn't just going to pick up and move somewhere for the hell of it, just to.
Right.
So when this became, when they got a team, it certainly piqued my interest, you know, and then started to explore it a little bit. So by that point, you know, by the time I get out to Vegas in 2017, I'd been doing radio for 24 years, between actually 26. I'd even throw in the 2 years at BU like we were talking about. So 2 there, 2 in Wheeling, 5 in Providence, 17 in Boston. I don't know if you guys get this, but I got this little thought in my brain of like, what's next? You know, like what's the next step you're going to take in your career? And for me, the next step was going to be, I hoped, trying to do television somewhere. And luckily for me, it turned out to be Vegas.
Turned out great. You're really good at it. Like Jeff makes me watch the games when I'm in town. He was always like, "This guy's fantastic."
I wouldn't watch our crap. Not a chance. I'd watch our crap.
Well, I just watch when you guys chirp each other. That's what I like, Gouche.
That's the best part of it. Just give each other shit.
Yeah,
you guys were you guys were the start of the change, like the TNT, the fun of the game. You guys had a little bit of that going on before they started to do it. You feel like you had anything to do with that change?
I don't know, but I think that, you know, I will say this. Shane and I talked a lot before we did ever did any games. I mean, we get out here and we did some exhibition games. I think that one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that people realized we were having fun and enjoying it every night.
Thank God.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, then there's a couple things that fact, well, like, you know, like it is entertainment, right? And I try to think, what I try to keep somewhere in my brain is that people watch our games for a release. You know, it's
an escape.
Work all day. Yeah, like their job, wife, the kids, whatever it is. You know, we all have our stresses in life, but when you get home at night and you grab whatever you want for a beverage and you throw your feet up and you put the game on, that should be an enjoyable experience for you. Now, we can't control if the Golden Knights lose 5-0, right?
Right.
It is what it is. But what is in our control very much is how we present the game and how much we try to enjoy ourselves doing the game. So the other thing that factored into it, and you know, you guys remember this, was the shootings at October 1 were right before that first season, literally 5 days before the first year. So I do think, you know, I had lived through the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013. And I remember thinking back then, you know, sports gives that, it can be a distraction, right? Even if it's just a couple of hours. And it's not a cure-all by any stretch. But can you give people something else 2.5 hours a day to just kind of, all right.
Absolutely.
Watch the team. And if we're the guys presenting it, it has to come across that we're enjoying ourselves and that we're having fun. So I think, you know, we certainly, Shane and I made a decision going into that first season. People are going to hopefully enjoy what we do because we're going to try and make it as fun as possible. And we're in Vegas. You know, we didn't go take jobs in Columbus, Detroit, Minnesota.
Right.
We came to Vegas, and that's been a huge part of it for us since the beginning.
Well, I think it's fantastic the way you guys do it. And that attitude of giving people an escape means so much. You know, who wants to watch a game where you feel like you're going into another staff meeting? You know,
Yeah.
it's you just
Well,
you
it's
got to get some
entertainment for
information
me, right?
across, but fun, right?
Yeah, I watch the NFL or whatever I watch. I'll throw on, but again, it's,
The Manning cast.
yeah,
It's
exactly. It's
play.
great.
I think
And
it's changing. Yeah,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I love it.
I always say this, look, not at the expense of the game. Like we have a load of fun during the games, but a 2-2 game with 2 minutes left. All right, we'll
Yeah.
focus it up here.
Well, that's yeah. I get that. At the same time, yeah.
It's a
You're
long
not.
season. You play 82 games, and you've got to be able to, you've got to have some fun with it.
Yeah, you're not talking about how you got a Starbucks with 30 seconds left in an overtime. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we it's understandable. I think you do a great job at it, and I have no idea how you got to know Jeff, but
Bad luck.
Yeah.
Lost a bet.
There's no lottery
Sharples
tickets there's no lottery in Nevada, but Goucher found he won. He won anyways. Hey, Goucher, before we let you run, a couple questions about the growth and growing pains of this team, how this team and how you kind of talked about how you, Shane, and the rest of the crew have tapped into the community. And I think you guys have done a great job doing that as a member of the community. You guys hit it out of the park, especially after what happened 1 October. We had friends down there. Friends that were lost. So what you guys have done since then is amazing, and what the team has done is great. To just talk quickly about how it's just an ascent. It was like straight up like a rocket ship, and then kind of a little bit of bumpiness the last year or so, and now the team kind of looks like with Cassidy and kind of stabilized a little bit. What do you see, and where do you see them going with the team they have this year?
Well, I knew this, Sharps. The reason I came out here was I knew they would go to the Cup final in year 1. So
Yeah.
You guys got 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. You gave them 1 year to figure it out.
yeah, let's just get right to it. No, I think they look, if we're being honest, Shane and I used to have these conversations the first year because they were 8-1 right away. Well, we used to have we wouldn't chat about it on television, but to each other. All right, where are they going to be at Thanksgiving, and where are they going to be at Christmas, and where are they going to be at the trade deadline? And we just kind of kept running out of benchmarks, So I do think that first season put them ahead of schedule by 5 to 10 years. Usually you come in and you do like what Seattle did last year. That's normal. You struggle for a couple of seasons or a few seasons, and then you gradually are able to build it. So now the expectation for them is sky high every year because of what they did in year 1. And they've gone on and done some good things since then. Last year, they go to the Final Four 2 other times. Last year was a different deal. I mean, they dealt with a lot of adversity, a crap load of injuries, which was the main reason they missed the playoffs. I mean, people forget, Sharps. They were in first place at the All-Star break last year. Mm-hmm. We had the All-Star game in Vegas, right?
Yep.
First place. They went from first place to 9th place, first place in the division, but a playoff team to out of the playoffs in what was that? 2 months. So I think they're in a good spot now. I got to know Bruce Cassidy a little bit in my time in Boston. My last year doing the games, they had fired Claude Julien. He had been there 10 years, and Bruce was an assistant on that team and took over. So for the final couple of months I was there, we had worked together. And I think he's, the biggest thing is he's high on the accountability factor, and you could speak to that, Sharps. I think players want to know where they stand, good, bad, or indifferent, right? He's not afraid to do that. Yeah, there's different ways to do it, and there's all different ways to get your point across, for sure. But I think the group could use some of that, and they're off to a really good start. I think the question is, can their goaltending keep it up? They don't have a proven number one, but maybe they can do it as
it's kind of been the Vegas way since the beginning, not to have not to really know who your goalie is going to be.
Yeah. Well, they have Fleury there, who was the face of the franchise.
Right.
And moved on, right?
Didn't you went through like 5 in the first couple months?
Oh, yeah. Well, the first year he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. He gets hurt. They had 5 total in the first month and a half.
Yeah.
So
it's really kind of the goaltending's the Vegas way. Like I would.
Yeah. It seems like it's, for whatever reason, there's always something in that area.
Right.
But so I think they've, first things first, can they get themselves back into the playoffs?
I honestly think Cassidy was a great choice. I think DeBoer was hired he was going to lose no matter what. He replaced such a popular figure. And people were kind of confused why that happened. So they were up in the air about it. And then he walked right into COVID.
Yeah.
So I think it was a great thing to fire him and get a great face like Cassidy.
No, I thought,
really
a couple of things. I thought that, we had a good rapport with Pete, meaning me and Shane.
Right. No, he's a great guy, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was, I thought they, meaning the coach, he and Ryan McGill, that were let go, I thought they would have got another chance just because that's a playoff team last year. If they don't get hit with an obscene amount of injuries.
Right.
Now, in a way, is it better if they didn't make it? Maybe, and I say this because if you get in, maybe it does camouflage that you had some issues that you had to address with the team anyways, right? Well, we made the playoffs. Well, if you miss, you miss. There's no camouflaging that. The other side of that too is, I do think with some people, to your point, always thought it was an odd fit because he had coached San Jose.
Right.
The battles they'd had in the playoffs and that whole debacle in Game 7 in 2019. And I think people were kind of like, what?
How are we supposed to like the enemy? Why? He's the enemy.
Yeah. And that's no fault of his. It's just the way it is, know. And
no, I think everybody won on him being fired. Cassidy, I think Pete won going to Dallas, new fresh start. Dallas won getting him because they're playing a different type of game now. It's just like you going down to West Virginia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do and they turn out.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we all know it's not a fair business, right? Bruce Cassidy won 51 games last year in Boston. It's the most he's ever won in his coaching career and got fired.
Yeah.
Pete DeBoer took the Golden Knights to the Final Four twice in 3 years. They would have gone to the playoffs last year, were not for getting their asses kicked with injuries, and got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Both landed on their feet with raises and long-term deals. So they're fine.
And meanwhile, the Canucks, 0-8.
Can't win a game.
Life is not fair. They're the opposite of Vegas. They're going to be 1-8.
I think Goucher brings up a good point though. Like almost clearing the deck chairs here in Vegas, and there wasn't a lot of expectation. And it seems to me, watching the team so far, Dave, and we'll let you run here. Won't keep you too much longer, but watching them early on and watching them, we're taping this after they played Toronto last night, which to me was the best game I've seen them play, I thought, in maybe a year, and that goes back to last year. Cassidy's got them playing on their front foot. They're on their toes.
Anybody knows Toronto, anybody knows playing Toronto, it's Cassidy though, right?
Yeah, and that it almost looked like he went into the playbook he used in Boston against them. But would you agree too, they may have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder a little bit this year and kind of want to prove that they're still a really, really good team?
Yeah, for sure, Sharps. And I agree with that. I think the game against Toronto was probably their most complete game. Even though it was a 1-1 game going into the third period, it didn't feel like it was that much in doubt, and then they got a goal early and that was it. I do think there is something to that. I think there are some people that kind of wrote them off after they missed the playoff. And I also think this, guys, look, it'd be naive to think that they are not the most popular franchise in the NHL. A lot of that is because of how they've had so much success so soon. They've been a little brash about it. Kind of about how they do things, but again, we're in Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
Bill Foley has talked about, initially playoffs in 3, cup in 6. No owner really talks outwardly. But that's what I love about Bill. You're never wondering, what is he thinking? He tells you what he's thinking, So I think some teams, and fan bases were happy to see them miss the playoffs last year. But I also think that the team has taken that as fuel for, we've still got a lot to prove here. And they have players individually. I mean, Jack Eichel coming off surgery and now a full season for him. Can he be the guy that I think we all think he can be? Logan Thompson's kind of been doubted most of his career. Can he emerge and really carry the team in the goaltending department? They've got a lot. I do think they feel like there's some unfinished business. I think they felt they were capable of a lot more last year than what they proved. Mm-hmm. But now it's a fresh slate for them. And I think they know that, there's teams that are gunning for them because of a lot of the success they've had so far in their first 4 years, and last year, not so much.
Lots of stories on that team. It's very dramatic as the Knights turn. It seems like it's a team where people get written off a lot, and it's been like that from day one.
Yep. Well, I mean, they call themselves the misfits, right? That first year, because look, they were all deemed expendable for whatever reason by their other teams, by their former teams. Now, some of that was cap related. Some of it was the way the formula was for each team. You could only protect so many guys anyways.
Right.
So no question that
doesn't make it any easier on a guy's ego, though.
No. Jonathan Marchessault scored 30 goals for the Florida Panthers and was left exposed in the expansion draft. Yeah. So now some of that was the ability of George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon back then to make, we're going to take Marchessault and all right, we want you to take Riley Smith's contract. We'll give you Shea Theodore from Anaheim, but you have to take Clayton Stoner's contract. They did a lot of that. Eric Holla and Alex Tuck from Minnesota. Now, I think the league smartened up a little bit by the time Seattle came around 5 years later, but they did a masterful job of being able to get some diamonds in the rough on that team and get a future Hall of Fame goaltender.
Seattle went back to San Jose Anaheim style.
Yeah.
Good luck, guys. See you in 5 years.
Ottawa won 10 games. It's for their first year.
Right. Well, thank you for coming on. You're a great conversation. You do such a great job on the TV. If people are in Vegas, turn on his game. If you're up at the game, and if you're at the game live, make sure you wave at them. If you're out
and DVR the game at home, go back and rewatch it.
And then you're always out playing music at bars. So if you go there and you think, hey, is that the announcer from the hockey game?
That looks
like the announcer.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
I got that going for myself too. But no, it's been great, guys. It's been a lot better than I anticipated it would go.
Oh, we could tell. We could tell by the way you showed up that you didn't want to do it. I'm like, oh no, it's been another Jeff choice that he hasn't explained.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
easy.
Easy,
hey,
Captain.
You got
Captain Sharps.
You did change your name. You had Sharps Ahoy at the bottom of yours for like 3/4 of the interview. Now you switched it. But hey, appreciate you coming on
yours for
dumb.
Yeah. Because he
Dumb and
put some
Dumbest.
names in. So, but
That's great.
thanks, Dave, and
All right, guys.
enjoy the call. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon, and maybe we'll try and get you on in the second half of the season, see where things are.
That sounds great, boys. Take care.
Have a good day.
All right.
What a good guy, Jeff. You picked another great guest. Las Vegas. We've had a lot of guests from Las Vegas, San Jose, LA.
Yeah, people are kind of starting to see our demographic and our geographical area, I guess. But Dave's awesome. He's got a great story. He used to call radio in Boston with my old defense partner, Bobby Beers, who still does the radio for the Bees. He's still on the radio. But Dave and Shane do the TV for Vegas and just really do a fantastic job. And he's a great guy to go out and have some fun with, too. So just a top shelf dude. And really, I enjoy spending a little time with him. He's a good guy.
Is Bobby Beers the guy that was drafted the same time as you, and he went to Boston and played with Ray Bourque, and then you went to Detroit? And played
No. Glenn Wesley was drafted the year after I was, and Wes had a great career. But Wes went, and his first partner was Ray Bourque. So
and your first
I was like,
was...
damn you, Wes.
Who was your first?
We're not going there, but
I love it. You got any shout outs, Jeff? We got to get this wrapped up. People
I gotta, I wasn't gonna give this shout out, but I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Kim Kardashian because unfortunately she came over to celebrate her 42nd birthday party in Vegas the other night on her private airplane, but they couldn't get in because of the wind. So they had to go back and celebrate her birthday in LA. And just want to give a shout out to her. Hope she makes it back in next time. Come down and see a Knights game.
Oh God.
Maybe we can get you some tickets.
Oh, those Kardashian girls, they know how to mess up a guy, man. Holy. If you're gonna date one of those girls, you're not coming out unscathed. Oh, I tell you what, jeez, boy. I don't have any shout outs this week. Shout out to everybody that listens to the show. Shout out to Brian for doing all the work. And shout out to shout outs. Not to these guys that are working on the beach. They cannot figure out when the weather's coming. I can, but they can't.
All right.
Anyways, love tall.
Love tall.